we start today's project, I just wanted to remind you that my Whiskey Business Cards at Home online card class is now open for registrations, and it'll be open until the 2nd of September. If you head over to my blog, stampingelegance.com, you'll see all the details. There's a few ways you can access the class. And if you've got any questions, leave me a comment and I'd love you to join in. Okay, on to the project. For today's project, I wanted to talk about the lovely labels Pick-a-Punch that I've just received. This one's in the annual catalogue. It's on page 169. So there it is there. As you can see, you can punch out 2 designs, and in each design you can punch out 3 different stacking sizes or widths. So it's really effective, it's really fun, but there is a bit of a learning curve. So I thought I needed to figure out some kind of formula that I could follow to try and figure out exactly how long my piece of cardstock needed to be so that I could make sure that all the labels lined up. You'll see what I mean as we go. So let's just get started and I'll show you a few tips. So I have pre-cut some of the strips that we need, and you're going to see a little guide popping up here on the screen just to help us as we go along. So the first strip, I'm going to be talking in centimeters. So this width is the 2.5 centimeter width. That's the thickest one. So that's going to slide in that channel there. And then the next width is 1.9 centimeters. That is going to slide into the next channel. And the smallest width, which normally would be where you put your sentiment, for skinny sentiments anyway, that one's 1.25, and that's going to slide in the channel underneath like that. This one can be a bit tricky cutting because in such small dimensions it's difficult on the trimmer. So I'll just show you how I have gotten around that. So I'm using my mini trimmer today, but this will work on any size trimmer. This one's only available to demonstrators. So what I've done, I've just measured along my cardstock and made a little tick mark at 1.25 with my pencil. And then I'm just going to slide it along to that tip mark and cut off the right size strip. I just find that's the easiest way to make sure you've got nice consistent measurements there. Okay. So now we've got our strips. I'm going to show you what I did first, and you'll soon see how this can be a little bit tricky. So let's say we're going to, first of all, we're going to stamp a sentiment. So I'll just grab my Well Said stamp set, and we'll just, for instance, use this congratulations. It's going to be interesting to see if I can stamp it straight, but we'll see. So I'll just mount that on my block. And let's ink that up, just like a little testing. Yep, it's enough ink. So let's say we're going to stamp that here. A little bit low, but it's going to be fine for demonstration purposes. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my punch, and probably you're thinking, let's just slide it in and we'll punch it and it's going to be straight. So what I'm going to do is do that. Now, can you see on there, I'll just try and hold it. So this one's nice and curved, but this one's been punched a little bit too short because you can't actually see where you're lining up on the inside. So let's just trim that off. And here's the first tip of the day. Turn your punch over. So slide your cardstock in your channel, you turn your punch over, and then what you're doing is you're actually looking to make sure that that paper is evenly positioned on each side of the detail in that punch. So now when I punch, I get an even, it's a bit difficult with the white behind it, I get an even balance on either side. That's tip number 1. Okay, so now my next thing is, right, where do I cut this so that when I punch it, it's going to have the same distance from one end to the other? So I'll take a guess and I'll say, okay, well, I think I'm going to kind of punch, I'm going to cut it about there, let's say, and then I'm going to pop it back into the punch. I'm going to line up and try and get it central on the design there. And I'm going to punch it. But what I get left with is 1.5 centimeters on this end and 1.5, yeah, and 1 centimeter on that end. Now, I have been accused in the past of being a bit of a perfectionist, and that unfortunately doesn't satisfy me in any way, shape or form. So I needed to try and figure out a bit of a legend or a formula as to what I could do to make sure that my word is always going to be in the middle. So this is what I'm going to talk you through today. So let's just move all of this out the way. So I'm going to pop up my legend on the screen again, and let's just keep that there so that you can follow along my process. So the first step is to check out what your sentiment length is. So I am going to measure my congratulations, and I'm just going to call it 5. It's a smidge over 5 centimeters, but let's call it 5. So the first step we need to do is 5 plus 2.5 centimeters. So I'm cutting my card strip at 7.5. Okay, next step is to stamp. And of course, now what you're hoping is to stamp in the middle. Okay, not too bad. So now I need to punch that label out. Just going to give it a second to dry before I go smudging it everywhere. So I'm going to put my card strip in, and I am going to line it up as best as I can in the middle of that design and punch. And now when I go on the other side, again, line it up as best I can. I'm hoping you can see that on the camera. And now I end up with my congratulations that, providing I stamped in the middle, is pretty much in the middle, nice and central. Right, so our next strip, which is our next design, punch. So that's punch label A. So what we need to do is figure out what that length is, and I mean from end to end. So end to end, we're going to call it 7. So this piece here needs to be the length of label A plus 1.5 centimeters. So we're going to cut this at 8.5. And then we're going to punch it. Now this one, as you can see, we're going for design 2 now, so it's hanging over a little bit each side. Just try and make it as central as possible. Lovely shape. And now when I stack that on there, it's my desired length on each side. So now I need to measure the label length of punch number B. So that one is, we'll call it 8. So my next strip needs to be 9.5. We're adding 1.5 centimeters on. And now when I slide this one in here, again, just wiggling it around, trying to get it as even as possible if you're a perfectionist like I am. If not, just whack it in there and go for it. So now, oh, I've got a bit of a, oh no, that's a sharp corner. That's how it's supposed to be, Jan. Okay, so now I can stack all of my labels on top of each other. I'm actually going to stick them down because that's going to be a better demonstration. I've just got my stamp and seal. So just line that one up. I like to hold one end down, and then you can sort of swivel the other end until you're happy with the position, and then just press it into place. So there you are. That's my demonstration of how you need to cut your lengths, your strip lengths, to get a really nice even label. So remember, the sentiment length, you add on 2.5 centimeters, then you punch out your label, then you measure that label, well, let's call it A, you add on 1.5, and that's the card strip length you need to punch the next label, and so on and so on. Okay, let's try it again with this other design here, which is this one. So let's try a different sentiment now. Actually, what we'll do is we'll skip the white layer, and we'll add a thicker sentiment, or a wider sentiment, I should say. So I have got, I can unstick everything, Grace's Garden here. Which I didn't prepare. Let's take this one here. So I've got another block. I thank you for all the kindness in yours. So this is a secondary sentiment. The first one is most likely, with all my heart, I thank you for all the kindness in yours. That's so sweet. Yep, that should fit on there. So what we're going to do first is stamp our sentiment so that we can determine what the length is. It doesn't need to be a perfect stamp. So we are going to call it 4.5. So the first length needs to be 4.5 plus 2.5. So we're going to cut that at 7. Stamp it. Try and get it as central as possible. Photopolymer makes that process a little bit easier. Okay. I'm making a mess. And then we're going to use this design this time. And of course we're skipping the first step. Turn it around and punch the label. That's a really nice style too. Okay, so our finished label length is 6.5, so we're going to add 1.5 on there. So our next strip we're cutting is 8. My kids would say, quick math, Mum, quick math. And we're going to feed that in. I find this one's actually really important to just nudge over a little bit and make sure it's nice and even. If in doubt, turn the punch around and it's much easier to see from underneath. Pop that one in. Okay, so now we can end up with the larger label and then the smaller label that fits underneath there perfectly. Let's stick that one down too. I like those colours together, they look good. Okay. So our 2 examples there. There's the other one, we'll just bring that one in. So we've got both designs, and there you have my tips and little quick reference chart for how to make sure your layers match up nicely on each end. I hope you found this interesting and hopefully helpful, and maybe it'll shorten your learning curve when you're using the lovely labels Pick-a-Punch from the annual catalogue. Thanks very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'd love you to leave me a comment and hit that subscribe.